Greetings everyone, Knackology here, long time no see. Had a lot going on, but had the time to make a video about this, and of course I go to make the video and didn't realize the audio was not working. So I'm going to use OBS to do a little bit of voiceover and basically say exactly what I was saying in real time. But if you're anything like me, then you're into retro gaming, and which basically means anything older than 15-20 years. PS2 era, PS2, Xbox, original Xbox, GameCube, and before, and some people say before that, some people say it includes that. Either way, about 20 years old. And with things that are that old, you inevitably get degradation, you get dust, dirt, grime, things that are broken, and or things that are broken at some point. And I'm by no means the whiz when it comes to fixing everything. I've broken all kinds of things, but one of the easiest things to repair and one of the easiest things to get back working is your old gaming cartridges. Now, there's if there's a demand, I can do cleaning individual systems, but this is more of a generic cleaning cartridges for old cartridge style gaming console systems, which this is about 30 years old. So Genesis, Master System, NES, SNES, in Nintendo 64, anything cartridge based. Inevitably what happens is the pins get dirty and they quit working at best, and at worst you have battery degradation. Sometimes the batteries give a problem and leak. Sometimes you have capacitor leaks, depending on what kind of cartridge you're talking about. It can be a host of problems, but this is one of the simplest forms of issues, and that is just dirty cartridges that need to be taken apart, if they need to be taken apart at all, and basically have the pins cleaned. And if you want to take it apart, you can take it apart and clean the board with some isopropyl alcohol and be on your way. And so here I'm going to show you the example of a cartridge that I bought at I'm trying to remember, it was like some kind of retro fair. There was a couple vendors that had some video games, not much stuff that I was interested in, more for my wife, but either way, some stuff there, and I bought 3 cartridge games, and 2 of them worked as soon as I put them in the system, and the third did not. They were all for the Genesis or Mega Drive if you're international, and so I brought them home, put them in, and this Battleship game did not work when I put it in. And so of course I go to make the video, and it actually does more when I make the video than it has done before, but it still wouldn't boot. So here I'm going to show you basically that this is a Star Trek The Next Generation game, and I'm basically here showing you that the cartridge, or that the system works. So I just put it in, turned it on, and you see it booting up. And what I'm going to do here in a second is turn it off and then put the Battleship game in, which is strangely enough called Super Battleship, but it's for the Genesis and not the Super Nintendo. And typically, from what I remember, is games from that era have Super for only the Super Nintendo, but that's neither here nor there. So here you see that the system is not working, or that the cartridge is not working. It powers on. It actually went further there than it has ever been, and that you got the first title screen or first copyright screen. And so, but before it would just turn on and do nothing. So what we're going to do here is take a look and look at how to clean the cartridge, and we're going to look at a couple different ways. A lot of people will say different things, but I'm going to show you the actual way that is recommended. So let's jump to that. Alright, so we got the cartridge sitting here, and I'm going to show you how to clean the pins on the cartridge itself. I got lucky on this cartridge in that the screws were Phillips head. I, for some reason, can't find my security Torxes. that most of my Genesis cartridges are secured by, and so I got lucky, and this one is just Phillips, so they're pretty easy to take off. Of course, you just unscrew. Be sure not to put too much pressure behind them regardless, because this is plastic. It will strip, and once it's stripped, that's it, and it screws into plastic on the other side. So once you unscrew them, be gentle, take it easy, and once you mess it up, there's no going back. And here we go. Here's the where everything happens. This is the actual game itself, and the very simple circuitry associated with it. Everything is on that chip, and other than the capacitor and some traces run here and there, that's it. So get you a little eraser that I'm sure if you have kids laying around your house anywhere, and gently go through across each individual pin and erase off basically all the dirt and grime on it. This is by far the best way to do it, to clean your pins, and is by far the safest way to clean your pins, and it doesn't involve them getting wet with any kind of isopropyl alcohol, though we can do that. We can take a look at that later. Looks like I skipped two, and I just realized that I did. How about that? But isopropyl alcohol is a good thing, but first line of offense when you're trying to get a cartridge back working is to use an eraser to do it, because it'll do the least amount of damage. It won't scrape the pins, it won't put any kind of moisture onto the pins, and it'll get all the dirt off of the pins, and that's of course what you're wanting to do. You will have instances where the pins will be more damaged. Somebody will have taken something more abrasive to it that will have taken the anti-rust coating off of it, and I've got cartridges right now that I bought. One is a Resident Evil 2 cartridge for the Nintendo 64, where there was some significant damage to the board, and it took me a couple hours of careful cleaning to get it to where the game would boot. And I'm very nervous about that cartridge, because of whoever tried to clean it before all but destroyed the pins and trying to get the cartridge clean, because I'm assuming it was rusted before. So you see here, I've combed carefully across each one of the pins, and I'm gonna put it right back together. No major cleaning. This is basically what you do whenever you're trying to you get a new cartridge. Typically what you want to do is do this first, but if you don't, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's just better to try not get that grime inside of your system on the pins in your system. But it's not the end of the world if you don't. As you can see, I didn't. It's easy to forget. So then you take it, you easily put the screws back in. Don't force them. Rotate backwards if you have to, counterclockwise, until you find where the screw pattern is at, the thread pattern's at. And then it's time to put it back in. All right, so let's get it back in there. Excuse the mess. I've recently got this new SCART board that I've got to reorganize everything. So as you can see here, I put it in, and it didn't work right off the beginning. But what I did is I did put it in my other. Well, I must have tried it again. Okay, so then it boots up and gives us a screen, and then goes blank. So here I'm still trying to figure out exactly, okay, do I have something else going on? I got as far as I got the first time, but then nothing happened. So what I decided to do is I put it in my Mega Drive setup that I have as part of a Pioneer Laserdisc system. That as you can see here, I still don't go any further. And so what I do is I put it into my Pioneer system here, and so here's my Pioneer Mega Drive combo unit that has a Mega Drive. I don't have the Genesis module, but I do have the Mega Drive module that's built into it. And basically it's just another way to test a system. And looks like it doesn't boot on the first try maybe. And this is why you always try something twice. because as you can see here, it's booted up. So it's looking like that the issues with the pins were just that they were dirty, and I probably should have spent a little bit more time on putting those erasers, putting that eraser to the pins to get them fully cleaned off, because those couple in and outs that I did until this point is probably what did the trick. So you can see here I'm going to switch back to Genesis and to the Genesis Model 1 and try it from here, and from here it'll work. And it looks like whatever little bit of dirt was left on there, we got off. So a successful cleaning and recovery of just a cartridge that needed a little bit of TLC. Okay, as a little bit of add-on to that, I'm going to reopen that cartridge, and I'm going to show just kind of what I did after the fact. Now that I know that the cartridge is working, I still want to make sure that when I put the cartridge, when I'm done with the cartridge, that it's as clean as I can get it. So here I'm taking the screws back off. I could have done this the first time, I just didn't. I like to try to do one thing at a time as far as the process of elimination. So here I'm just taking a look at the board, seeing if I see any kind of other issues that maybe I didn't notice the first time. But when I flip it over is when I do immediately find an issue, and it's with a bent pin. So if you see here, I've got my camera trying to focus on it, and I have a bent pin right here where the pin is bent over, and it's almost touching one of the pins that are coming off the back of the microchip itself. And I'm trying to get it to focus, and originally it might not have looked that close, but actually it was very, very close, and it's possible that some current was jumping across. It was close enough that when I first found it, that I couldn't get my fingernail in between the two pins. So it's very close. I might have pushed it out a little bit with trying to get my fingernail in there, but it was extremely close, and that might have been one of the issues with why the system wasn't booting, because of how close those pins were. I forgot to remove this box in the middle of the screen, so now I'm going to be stuck with it. But as you can see, I bent both pins over, as a matter of fact, to try to get them over because of just how they were both bent. But I got that pin bent and out of the way to where it won't be an issue any further. Now, what I could have done if I could have found my clippers, would I just clipped that end off, and it would have been the end of it as well. But I didn't do that. So, alas, we must keep going. Okay, so here I've got just enough alcohol to saturate the end of a Q-tip, and like I said, I, like an idiot, didn't fix it to where I could turn this back off, so it's just going to look like this. But as you can see, I'm going over every pin gently but firmly, but just not trying to put all my weight into it either, with the Q-tip that's saturated with isopropyl alcohol. It evaporates very quickly, and so long as you're just not pouring it all over the board, you're not going to have any issues from that going forward. And so here I go across all the pins on the back, once again trying to make sure every little bit of dirt that could be on there is taken care of by the IPA. And then from there you can easily move on to making sure all the traces on the board itself are dirt free and have no issues. And this is always somewhat of just something to be careful with, because it's easy to get the strands of cotton on the Q-tip caught on the board, the pins on the board. I always end up messing up the head of the Q-tip. It's just something to be careful of, so that you're not left with strands of Q-tip bridging the connection between the places on the board, or the two different pins on the board. It wouldn't be necessarily the end of the world. You just don't want to leave anything on there. You want to keep it as clean as possible. So then after that, you go through just wiping down all the back of the board with all the IPA, trying to make sure that any dirt that could be on there, because you don't know what happened to this cartridge before you got it. Here I am flipping the Q-tip over, saturating the other end, and I'm going to do the other side with a fresh swab and with a freshly saturated Q-tip head. And basically the same thing. It's just going across the whole board and making sure you're doing the equivalent of electronics dusting. Just you're doing it with alcohol, rubbing alcohol, as opposed to pledge or something like that. Just trying to make sure that anything that could be on that board is cleaned off and taken care of, so that it doesn't cause any issues in the future. And also with that, inspecting the board itself. If you were to ever see any kind of black streaks coming off of any of these pins, there's a potential, for issue, and maybe why the cartridge is malfunctioning. If you were to see some kind of like liquid had leaked out of this, that means that capacitor's gone bad or could be going bad. This is something that would need to be replaced almost immediately, and at the very least taken off the board until you could get a replacement, because that means it's going to that capacitor, what's in that capacitor is going to destroy the traces on the board. And so it's very important to get the capacitor off if you ever find that it has in fact busted or is leaking or whatever the case may be. At the very least, it's something that can cause damage if unattended to, and at worst, it's something that can destroy the traces on the board. Or it could be that the capacitor is no longer able to function as a capacitor is supposed to function, and can cause damage to the chip because it's not able to handle the current like it was made to, because of the dielectric leaking out. So it's just very important to look for it, and it's something that you can't miss. If you open that cartridge up and you see looks like dried, just like something where maybe somewhere you may have spilt Coke in the past, and what Coke looks like spilt, it will look similar to that. It may not be the same color, but it would look like you see that sticky kind of surface around it or running from it. And either way, that tells you you've got something bad going on, and you need to replace it before you ever put power back to it again. So finish cleaning up the board, and then we'll move on to reassembly. And always make sure before you put it back together that you've made sure all the alcohol on the board is dried off. I always hold both sides of the chip over like a fan for like 20-30 seconds a piece, and any kind of fan with any kind of decent blowing speed will evaporate that alcohol off of it very quickly. Always counterclockwise turn your screw heads on these plastic pieces to make sure you find the place where the thread starts, so you're not cross-threading it. And now it's time to, let's see what it looks like. Alright, I just took Star Trek out, put that in, and boots up first time. Fantastic. And so now we have a fully functioning battleship game ready to play and ready to show my kids what old school gaming looks like. This is how you restore a non-working cartridge that works perfectly, but it's just a little dirty, needs a little cleaning, back to 100% working order. And so you can enjoy those old school retro games that were actually hard, only had so many lives, and if you didn't win in the lives you had allotted, you had to start the game all over. Old school difficulty factor. And anyway, this has been Knackology, and we're signing off for now. Thanks for watching.